The FedLife podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a fiduciary, fee-based financial planning firm serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of Raymond James. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc. And now, here are your hosts. Dan Sipe serves as a branch manager for Raymond James Financial Services and Serving Those Who Serve. Ed Zerndorfer is our guest and federal benefits expert in the space.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the FedLife podcast. I am your host, Dan Sipe. Additionally, I am the branch manager here at Serving Those Who Serve and Lee Sipe & Associates. I want to begin, as always, I always do, by saying thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen. And above all, thank you for your service to the government, the country, to me, to everyone. You do not hear that enough. You will always hear that here. Another thing you'll always hear with us is Ed Zerndorfer. The guru is back with us once again as part of our ongoing mission to reach, teach, and serve you, the career civilian Fed. Once again, we're going to follow Ed's FedZone articles. You can find those at fed-zone.com. I urge you to read this one because it's the series of 3, because it's dynamite. That gives us one more way to reach and teach. So, Ed, this month, both of our podcast episodes will be devoted to a topic that I know is the dream for a lot of our Feds. And that's that second home, that retirement home, that type of thing. And you have written 3 great articles digging into the retirement side of that conversation. So again, I encourage all of our listeners to head over to the FedZone, fed-zone.com, give those a read. This is what I love about what we do, Ed. We're covering the things that folks really care about and helping them understand what they need to know. So, Ed, you open up with the concept of snowbirding, living in the north and having that balmy location south. But you are asking some important questions. And the first one is huge, and almost everybody overlooks it. And that is, should you own or rent that southern paradise? So give us your thoughts here.
Yes, Dan. Well, obviously, if you're going to do the snowbirding, you're going to live, let's say, 6 to 8 months in the north, and then you want to go to the south, in terms of getting during the winter and it's getting warmer weather. Everybody talks about Florida, but there are other states, Arizona and so on, to get that warmer weather. There's one issue that they have to face. Well, when I go away for the winter for my snowbirding, where am I going to live? Got to live
Sure.
somewhere. Can't live in a hotel room. So the question comes up: should I buy or should I rent? Now, they both have advantages and disadvantages, and that's what I point out in the article. So let's talk about both. We're going to talk about renting.
Okay.
What advantages, disadvantages in terms of short-term rentals and long-term rentals.
Okay.
So what would be the advantage of a short-term rental? Avoiding maintenance fee, any type of maintenance, everything's being taken care of. The rent should be definitely lower than if you had to take out a mortgage because you're owning. Also, maybe the place you found, it looked nice, but it didn't turn out so nice. This with a short-term rental, you have an easier, what I call, exit plan to go to another short-term rental. And any disadvantages? Well, you're going to be paying rent, and it's like such as the only thing you have to show for it is your receipts. There's no advantages tax-wise. Just paying
Sure.
rent. Right. All right, let's talk about long-term rentals. Now, that could be also advantageous, and there are disadvantages. One of the advantage of a long-term rental is that you'll be there on a regular basis throughout the year. You'll be there for the time that you're there, and you'll pay the certain rent. Again, avoiding maintenance, any type of maintenance expenses and so on. The disadvantages are, again, you're renting. But also, if you have to leave, when you go back, you're talking about long-term rentals more. It's going to be 12 months. We're talking about 12 months per year. when you're away, you still have to pay the rent. You still
Sure.
have to pay the rent. Okay. And is it possible to sub-rent? I guess in some cases it would be. Somebody else will come out there. That means that if you have furniture there, you'll be renting your furniture. What would the subletter do? The kinds of, in terms of damages and so on, that might be your responsibility. So again, there are disadvantages with the rentals. One thing I have to tell you, though, that when you rent, you have to put certain things in there like Wi-Fi, security, maybe security. That's going to stay there. That's going to stay there. Or if you want to charge your rent, if you have to subleasing it to someone else, again, you'll have to work that into the cost. Again, when the lease is up for you, let's say you walk away, no tax advantages. So again, renting definitely has some advantages and some disadvantages, whether it's short-term or long-term.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's say we've crunched our numbers and we've decided on whether we want to own versus rent. Next, you talk about domicile. Why is that an important consideration?
Well, in terms of, I'd say, buying something, I just want to say this, that if you feel that you're better off buying something, there are advantages in terms of building up equity that, and you could sell it down the line, and then you give it to your kids and so on, the sale price. But another advantage of owning is establishing legal domicile. And the reason I'm saying this because many times I get questions from my clients. As you know, Dan, I'm an accountant. I have several federal retirees who go to Florida for the winter, who go to Arizona for the winter, and Florida has no income tax, but Arizona does. And they ask me, do I have to pay any tax to Arizona? After all, I'm a legal resident. I live here in Maryland. Why do I have to pay tax to Arizona? And I say, my response is, the states are very hungry for revenue.
Sure.
And I have a policy that I share with many fellow accountants. And that policy is that if you're living there, renting or owning, and you're living in that state for a minimum 30 days, and you're getting income, you're getting your retirement income coming in, you have maybe investment income, you are obligated to pay tax for the amount of time that you're there. It's called being a part-year resident. They say, but I'm not a legal resident state. I said, well, they don't care. You're taking advantage of all the things that the state has to offer. You have police protection. You're walking on the sidewalk. The state, city state has to maintain the law. You're taking advantage of it. Therefore, you have to pay from taxes to the state for that time period. Now, you won't have to pay tax on the same income to your legal domicile, like in the case you live in Maryland. But Maryland, like all states, will give you a credit on the taxes that you paid Arizona. They will give you what's called a tax credit to Maryland. The question is, gee, that sounds kind of complicated. Well, how about this? How about if I establish legal domicile in Arizona? This way, I only have to pay tax to one state. Okay, I'll rent to Maryland. Well, it works the same way. Oh, but wait a minute. The taxes in Arizona are less than they are in Maryland. So I think I'm going to establish legal domicile in Arizona. So the question is, how do you establish legal domicile? That is a very difficult question. Now, some advisors say, well, if you live there physically for more than 6 months and 1 day, that makes that your legal domicile. No, it doesn't work that way. You got to do something more formal than just living there. And I have a list of some of the things that you can do to prove a change in domicile. Let me go through the list here. One is homeownership. You own a home in a new state. It's better than to rent in the previous state. Here you're going to be buying a home in sunny Arizona or Florida. Here's one that many people may not think about: car ownership. You got to change your car registration. Okay, license plates and driver's license in the new state. These are all steps, Dan, that will allow you to change your legal domicile. Voter registration. Okay,
gotcha.
Change your voter registration. Estate planning. You go and think about this. You have an estate plan. You have a will, a trust that was set up in your state that you were living. Now you're going to move to. They're going to have establish a legal domicile in a new state. Get a new will. Get a new trust. Go through all the formality that you have to do to come up with a new estate plan. Mailing address. Change the mailing address to the new state for bills, banks, and brokers. Make sure all your bills, everything is going to be sent in via mail, U.S. mail. People still use that into your new state of residence. And finally, the amount of time living in a new state. You should reside in a new state for a minimum of 6 months. You're living there for a minimum of 6 months. Continue tracking using, and how do you do that? There is software that will establish time living in a new state and will actually track your living in the state. Also, your food and gas receipts should be retained. If you eat, you buy food in the store, you get a receipt, shows the name of the store, city, state, same thing with, you go out, when you pump your gas, get a receipt, shows the thing. Retain those receipts. Now, why is that? Why do you want to do that? Because your previous state may have a problem here. You used to be a resident here. Now you're saying that you're not a legal resident. Well, we have to make sure about that. And states have been known to do that, to come after people who have changed their legal residence, make sure that they have done everything they need to do or should do to establish legal domicile in a new state. I want to share a true story with you about this.
Okay.
Back in the 80s, particularly, there were individuals, retirees, they just had retired from either the state, maybe they worked for the federal government in New York and California, and residents in New York wanted to go to a state that was warmer, had no income tax, Florida. So they actually moved to Florida. They did establish legal residence. And the pensions that they earned were earned while they were residents of New York. Same thing with California. California residents went to Nevada. Nevada has no income tax. So both New York and California, when these individuals were drawing their retirement, said, wait a minute, you're taking money you're getting your retirement that you earned while in New York, California came to Nevada, you're getting your retirement income, the retirement income you earned while California residents. For example, you work for remember the big software companies in California, Silicon Valley, and you've got a tremendous 401k plan. And you pay, and you got a deduction, 10% deduction from the state of California for the money that you contributed to the 401k plan. New York, I think it was worth 12% deduction for the state income tax, the deduction you got from contributing. Now we want that money back. Now that you're taking the money out, we want to get that money back. Those taxes that we gave you a break, now we want the money. And this went on for years until the year 1995. What happened in 1995? Congress passed a law called the Pension Source Law. The Pension Source Law. Now, what does the Pension Source Law say? It says that a state in which you earned your retirement and you contributed to a defined, a qualified retirement plan, like a 401k plan, and the state gave you a deduction, like the federal government does, when you contribute to the TSP, you're a federal employee, and you contribute to the traditional TSP, you reduce your federal income taxes in the year that you contribute. Same thing with the state income taxes. So the Pension Source Law said that the state that you earned it cannot come after you to get the money. And that has been the law since 1995, that no state can go after a resident who left the state and went to a different state to get their tax revenue. Just want to add one thing to that. That law, as I say, was passed by Congress in 1995. And at that time, the speaker, not the Speaker of the House of Representatives, yeah, he was the Speaker, was a person named Jim Wright from Texas, no income tax. And to Jim Wright, when he came to Congress in the 70s, he became a resident of Virginia, which is an income tax.
Sure.
So He contributed years to the congressional pension, to the TSP. Well, he decided to retire in 1994. And that law, the pension source law, passed right at the time he went back and retired, went back to Texas. Isn't that a miracle, Dan? Well,
Miracle.
I got this for you. Jim Wright did not pass that law for Jim Wright. It's for everyone. It includes, by the way, if you contributed to a deductible traditional IRA. You put the money into a traditional deductible IRA, you get a federal tax break, you get a state tax break. Same thing. The state cannot come after you. So that's one thing that you want to mention about the legal domicile makes. That's one thing they cannot do in terms of states cannot do your former state to come back and get the tax revenue. But again, it's very important to make sure you do all the things you need to do to get a change in legal domicile, because the last thing you want to do is get a letter from your state revenue department saying, you owe us money.
Gotcha.
You have not established a residence anywhere. We still consider you to be a resident of our state. Therefore, we want our revenue. You don't want to fight. You don't want to get into any legal things because you're going to be paying a lot of legal fees. So you need to take all the right steps to establish legal domicile.
Good tip. So that wraps up Article 1, folks. Again, I encourage you, head over to FedZone, fed-zone.com, read it. You'll see Ed's list there. So we're going to take a little bit from your second article, and you zig a bit, and you bring up healthcare issues. Tell us why that's an important consideration.
When one is retired, that is such an important issue. Part of your plan for retirement, you got to consider all your health care, what's going to happen. I get this question, I get this question many times from clients. I want to retire to a state. I like to retire to a place in which I have to get the least expensive. Ideally, I don't pay any taxes. And I caution the person, have you checked it out? Because sometimes moving to a place that doesn't have great quality health care, hospitals, doctors, and when in retirement, this should be a high priority. You got to consider that. You have to consider health care when you're first retired and you're not sick, but down that in future years, as you get into your 70s, 80s, 90s, you're going to have to be in a place that offers good health care, doctors, hospitals, etc. Insurance. What type of insurance do you have? You're on Medicare. What type of Medicare supplement, Medigap insurance will it be? Now, as you know, Dan, Medicare Advantage plans are very popular now. What people don't realize is that those Medicare Advantage plans are what I call geographically centered. They're not all the same in terms of,
Gotcha.
because what exactly are with the Medicare Advantage plans, you are entering Medicare HMO, in which your medical care, dental, vision care, it's under a HMO setting. There are PPOs, but again, you want to stay within the preferred network. It's different. They vary from state to state. So if you're a federal retiree, let's say, and you're enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan, and you let's say you're in the Washington, D.C. area, and you decide, I think I'm going to move to Florida. Well, that Medicare Advantage plan that you have here in the Washington, D.C. area will do you no good when you move to Florida. You got to choose on a Medicare Advantage plan. So you have to consider that. And if you are not enrolled in a Medicare Advantage plan, you just have original Medicare, Medicare Part A, and Medicare Part B. You need a Medicare supplement plan, an FEHB plan, and those plans are also geographically dependent. So you have to make sure that if you do decide to move, that you're going to have to change your FEHB plan. I cannot emphasize the fact that make sure that you've checked out the area in terms of healthcare. I want to relate a story about that. I had someone who lives in my community who worked for the federal government for about 35 years here in the Washington, D.C. area. He retired back in 2009. And he said to me, I've had enough of Washington area. I'm going to move to Florida. And he said, I swear I'm never going to come back to Washington. I don't want to come back here at all. Well, unfortunately, within the first year of retirement, he lived in Boca Raton, Florida. He developed stomach cancer. And there was no quality care down there for his stomach cancer. He was forced to come back to the Washington, D.C. area. He has one child lives here, and he had to go to NIH. He had to go to the NIH because one thing we're blessed with in the Washington, D.C. area, Baltimore area, we have good quality health care, cancer treatments. We have Johns Hopkins, NIH. He had to come back. He lived here about 6 months, and he passed away. So my point again is, look at all the aspects of healthcare in terms of where you're going to move to. Do they offer good geriatric care? They have doctors, who specialize in geriatric care.
Sure.
Cancer care, things like that. So you got to check it out. You got to be very, 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 very careful.
And those are truly great points. And these are the things that the people typically are going to miss because you get really excited. It's, oh, this house is great. This is going to be so great. We'll come here. We'll do this. We'll have all these great times. You need a plan for living your life. So those are fantastic points. And wow, you've given our folks a lot to think about so far. But folks, I'll tell you this, there's even more on the way. So be sure to listen to the next episode. Because again, we're doing this as a two-parter where we are going to dig in to the estate and financial planning considerations, as well as the importance of having a good exit strategy. So you won't want to miss that. And I'll say it again, on behalf of all the feds, I just want to say thank you for being such a great resource.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure sharing this with you, Dan, and hopefully all federal retirees who are thinking about moving south, going south. I have some clients who live in Florida. They go north in the summer to get away from the Florida heat. Same thing applies to you as well. I have one client who goes to northern Michigan. Beautiful in the summer there. A lot better than Florida. The only complaint is, what do I do about the bugs? Well, I have no solution about the bugs up there, but I do have solution as far as financial planning. I say to them, by the way, you'll have to pay state income tax because Michigan has an income tax. Ooh, maybe I'll think about not going to northern Michigan.
Well, we'll dig into more at our next episode, folks. Be sure to join us then. And folks, that is a wrap. We are serving those who serve. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel and Spotify. And please, 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 please share this with your friends and even a few strangers. Don't forget those live webinars every single week. Just go to the SWS website. You'll see the blue webinar button. Hover it, turns red. Click it. You're going to see the whole menu. The guru will come to you, reach you where you are, teach you where you are, serve you where you are. Sign up for one, sign up for all of them. Share this page with your friends. They will thank you. And be sure to read Ed every single week in the Fed Zone. That's fed-zone.com. So for Ed, the crew at Serving Those Who Serve, and me, Dan Sipe, I'll sign off as I always do by saying, good luck, Godspeed, and above all, remember, it's your Fed life. Please make it a great one because you deserve it. Stay well, everybody. We are out.